Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I'm going to be telling you about how private institutions have secretly been building a giant stake in NEO and how one instance could almost qualify as insider trading. I'll be telling you who's been buying NEO, how much they've invested, why they've invested and why you might want to invest too, and what this means for NEO as a company. But before we get started, only about 15% of you are actually subscribed to the channel, which is really low. So subscribe. It's free and you can always unsubscribe later if you want. Now let's get into the video. So I'll start with the institution that's been most talked about recently for increasing their share size dramatically. But I'm going to rewind quickly and explain a little bit of backstory, because that way you'll see that it could almost qualify as insider trading. Newly appointed President Joe Biden recently announced that he's appointed Brian Deese to head up the National Economic Council. The Clean Energy Initiative is one of Biden's top policies, and he wants to ensure that over the next 5 years he really expands this initiative. This basically means that there will be extensive government involvement in the energy and transportation sectors, raising the barriers to entry and effectively pushing out the old ICE manufacturers to favour EVs and other alternatively powered vehicles. Now, what you might not know is that Brian Deese is also the global head of sustainability at BlackRock, one of the largest investment management firms in the entire world. As of Q3 2020, BlackRock had around $7.8 trillion of assets under management. BlackRock are also coincidentally one of the largest shareholders of NEO, recently increasing their shareholdings by around 25% up to nearly 53 million shares. At a recent sale price of $46 per share, this means BlackRock owns around $2.4 billion worth of NEO. Maybe Brian Deese had some influence introducing the Clean Energy Initiative and communicated this to his team at BlackRock and encouraged them to buy more shares of NEO. Although this is quite unlikely, as BlackRock probably have separate teams and avoid communicating to each other to avoid this exact thing from happening and to avoid everyone being thrown in jail for insider trading. Also, even though $2.4 billion is an almost unimaginable amount of money, it's actually a fairly small portion of BlackRock's entire assets, only about 0.03%. But considering that the market capitalization of NEO is about $63 billion and the share price of NEO is about $46 a share, or it was at the time of recording this video, that means there's about 1.4 billion NEO shares in issue, meaning that BlackRock owns about 4% of the total NEO shares. The next giant institution that's been accumulating NEO is the Vanguard Group. Now, the Vanguard Group are fairly similar to BlackRock and have around $6.2 trillion of assets under management as of January 2020. I guess the figure hasn't been updated since then. Vanguard are also one of the largest shareholders of NEO, recently also increasing their position by about 20% up to 34 million shares. Again, with a share price of around $46 per share of NEO, this means that Vanguard owns around $1.5 billion worth of NEO. This means that Vanguard own around 2.5% of the total NEO shares in issue. But again, it's not a very large portion of their entire assets, only around 0.02%. Another giant shareholder who own even more shares in NEO than BlackRock and Vanguard combined is Baillie Gifford, who own over 108 million shares, recently increasing their position by about 11%. This means that they own over double the amount of shares that BlackRock own, giving the shares a value of around $5 billion. This means that Baillie Gifford own a whopping 8% of NEO. But the really interesting thing here is that Baillie Gifford have less assets under management than both BlackRock and Vanguard, with only about $370 billion of assets under management, meaning that NEO accounts for about 1.35% of their entire assets. And if you want to buy some shares in NEO just like these private institutions, then be sure to sign up to the free trade using my link down below in the description, and you can get a free share worth up to £200 when you deposit a minimum of £1. Yep, that's right, you've only got to deposit £1 and you will get a free share worth up to 200 quid. But the big question is, why are these private institutions buying so much NEO? Well, I guess to some extent, they have to. When somebody invests into a Vanguard fund, they have to deploy those assets under management and invest into certain stocks. They can't just obviously leave that cash from the investors sat in a bank account earning little to no interest. But why have they specifically chosen NEO as an investment? And for this, I think there are so many reasons. And the first is that NEO fits with the belief of all of these private institutions, especially BlackRock, who believe in sustainable investing and who want to direct most of their funds into carbon neutral companies. But there's also so much positive news around NEO, which is why these private institutions are increasing their holdings of NEO rather than decreasing. For example, Victor Gu, NEO's general manager of manufacturing, recently announced that they've stepped up manufacturing by 50%. NEO can now manufacture around 30 ES6 models and 30 ES8 models every single hour. If you multiply this by, say, an 8-hour working day and around 262 working days in a year, that means that NEO can now produce around 120,000 vehicles each and every year. NEO CEO, William Lee, echoed Victor's comments and said that he wants NEO to be producing around 150,000 vehicles a year in 2021 and wants to increase that production to around 300,000 vehicles a year in the future. In October, Tesla produced around 12,000 Model 3s in China. That means that Tesla had the ability to produce around 144,000 vehicles per year, meaning that NEO are actually hot on Tesla's tail. Although, Tesla produced a whopping 21,600 vehicles in November, meaning that they can now manufacture around 300,000 vehicles a year. This is absolutely great news for NEO though, having produced around 11,000 vehicles in the entire of 2018 and around 20,000 vehicles in the entire of 2019, they can now produce this many vehicles in a single month. Victor Gu also noted that he wants production to increase even further in the future and noted that now hopefully it won't be production that bottlenecks the company's growth. This just helps build on the massive jump in production numbers that NEO saw going from 2018 to 2019 and from 2019 to 2020. 2021 is setting up to be NEO's best year yet in terms of production capabilities and company performance and growth. And now because production numbers are going up and sales are going up, margins are going up, cash is strong and research and development is going well, so many analysts are upgrading their price predictions rapidly. Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan recently increased their price targets to around $50 per share, Bank of America increased their price target to around $54 a share, and Credit Suisse increased their price target to around $60 per share. All of these banks can see the potential that NEO has and the fact that it's delivering on its promises as well, and are therefore increasing their price targets progressively. I think you also have to remember that these are short-term price targets, and CNN Money suggests that over the next 12 months, analysts believe that NEO will be priced at somewhere between $104 per share and $394 per share. This would put the market capitalisation of NEO at somewhere between $145 billion and $550 billion. Now I do think that this valuation is a little bit high, especially on the upper end, as Tesla is currently worth around $570 billion. Now considering that Tesla currently produce around 2 to 3 times the amount of vehicles that NEO produce in China, it seems a little bit excessive for NEO to be valued the same as Tesla right now. Over the next 12 months, I'd expect NEO to be worth around 1/3 of what Tesla is currently worth if Tesla are producing 3 times as many vehicles. Therefore, around $190 billion or $130 per share. But I did say in my last video that I do think that NEO could be worth the same as Tesla, maybe even more, if they can increase their production numbers and outproduce Tesla and beat it to level 5 autonomous vehicles. Now I think it is worth noting that BlackRock, Vanguard and Baillie Gifford aren't just increasing their shareholdings of NEO and selling off everything else that they own. Obviously NEO does make up a small portion of their entire portfolio. They're well diversified. For example, they've also been increasing their shareholdings in Tesla as well. For example, Vanguard actually own more shares of Tesla than they do shares of NEO. They own 43 million shares of Tesla and only 34 million shares of NEO, meaning that they own around $26 billion worth of Tesla and only $1.5 billion worth of NEO. I think you have to remember that right now Tesla is still very much the dominant company. It's US based instead of being based in China, which is inherently more risky. It's already profit making instead of still being loss making, and it's already asserted itself as one of the best car manufacturers ever, whereas NEO is obviously still fairly early on into its life. And this is why private institutions currently own so much more Tesla. However, they can recognise the massive potential that NEO has to continue growing and to potentially 10x its share value over the next few years. As always guys, if you enjoyed this video then be sure to check out some of my others. Alternatively, subscribe to the channel and ding the notification bell, because that way you'll be alerted when I upload a new video. Cheers!